Tutopolis has a planning problem. We have been endlessly bouncing back and forth between major expansions to our colony and having to rebuild and upgrade all of our infrastructure. Sure, part of that is just the Timberborn gameplay loop, but when we're sitting on 5,000 food with only 50 beavers, some of it is just poor planning. Today, we put numbers to paper and make sure our colony is utilizing its resources as efficiently as possible. We start incorporating permanent infrastructure by finally planning out how many beavers we can sustain and expanding our living structure accordingly. While we're at it, we use metal and gears to upgrade some of our oldest infrastructure, our water tanks and storage piles, into their third and final tier. All of this work will prepare us for our next massive project, incorporating sluices into our dam system. And we are back in Tutopolis as our beavers run out to do their jobs. So this episode is going to be focused pretty much solely on making sure that everything in our colony is working as well as it can. As I said in the intro, we've got way too much food. We have, let's see, less than 50 beavers, 49 beavers, and 5,000 food. We have less power than we need. We're pulling 840 horsepower out of 800 horsepower. That's not good. And we are actually going to start with this power issue. So someone mentioned after the last episode, I have all of these powered buildings running less efficiently than they could. Like this centrifuge is running at 90% efficiency because it does not have the power input to run correctly. Now, one of the things we could do to fix that is to build more water wheels, but with the way we have this set up right now, it would be a lot of work and quite frankly would ruin the aesthetics of this river right here. If we were going to be putting it somewhere over here, we'd have to run it back up this cliffside, and that would require disconnecting this again or going all the way around. So we're not going to do that. So other than these water wheels, we have two other ways we could make power. Number one, we have this power wheel. This takes a job. It only functions during working hours, which is fine right now. But it takes a job from a beaver, and then that beaver will produce 50 horsepower during working hours. As long as they are working, they will be producing that. The problem that we're going to have with that, and the reason that that is not going to be useful for us, is that we are sitting with 8 open workplaces. So our other option, and it's really two options, is wind power. Down here we have a basic windmill that's going to produce up to 150 horsepower, but it changes, it fluctuates throughout the day based off of whatever the internal simulation is doing. That is going to cost us 20 planks and 20 logs. We also have large windmills, which generate up to 300 horsepower. Also vary the same way regular windmills do. Once we get to the point where we are generating a significant amount of power through wind, we are going to want to move to those windmills, and we're going to want to incorporate batteries. But none of that is very important right now. We just need to make up this difference, this about 40 horsepower difference. Make sure that we're almost always keeping that difference covered. And then we are going to put a couple more industrial buildings down here to take a little advantage of that difference. So it's going to be 120 science points. And then we can build these. I'm just going to build them at the back of this plateau area, because we're going to get rid of them in due time. So I'm going to go for 3 of them. So that's going to be up to 450 extra horsepower for us. And then I am, of course, just going to hook these up. And then they're also, because of how far it is, going to need a path that goes back there. But our beavers should get on over there and start building. So as day rolls back around, our beavers are getting to work on that. Once these are done, we will have supplemental power for this, and then we are going to add a few more lumber mills. Now, I'm going to leave this lumber mill down here for a little while. Eventually, I'm going to get rid of both this lumber mill and this gear workshop and move both of them up here. But for now, these only take 50 horsepower. So any one of them is going to be less than the maximum that one of these windmills could produce. So even if they are producing less than a normal amount of power, I think with these lumber mills here, we should still be fine on power. I'm going to hook those up, and then I'm also going to build us another gear workshop and hook that in. Now, I don't know if these are going to be permanent or if I'm going to move them somewhere. They're fairly cheap buildings, but for now, that's what we're going to be going with. And if we come over here to our first windmill, which is connected up, we will see that currently it could produce a maximum of 150 horsepower, but it is only producing now 82 horsepower. But even that reduced half amount of horsepower is going to be more than the 840 that our original buildings were pulling. Now, with these 3 new additional powered buildings, that would still have a deficit, but that is why we are building an additional 2 windmills over here. And now ultimately I'm hoping that this benefit will be twofold. Number one, I'm hoping that it'll just help us cover this deficit of planks that we currently have. But I'm also just hoping that with some storage buildings over here, that this area will end up being more efficient than what we have over here, where they have to cross this bridge back and forth. But with that all being built, I think we can move along to the second issue of this episode, which is going to be expanding our population. Now, we have a lot of food, 5,200 to be exact, and we're actually storing basically as much food as we can. This is not exactly a problem, because storing more food than we need means that our beavers will never go hungry. But it also means that we are producing a lot of food that we don't need, no one's eating, and it's taking up jobs. If we look over on this side panel here, we have 11 open workstations. So it makes a lot more sense, rather than having these 11 open workstations and surplus of food, to just go ahead and expand our living quarters to accommodate for as many beavers as we can reasonably have. Now, this is still the Timberborn beginner side. Now, this is still the Timberborn beginner's guide, so I don't want to go crazy. With the amount of food that we have, we could probably double, maybe even go up to 120 beavers. But doing so would be risky, because if we got hit with a drought and for some reason something had gone wrong and we had no water here and all of our plants dried up, we would not have enough food left over for our beavers to eat. So the general rule of thumb, if you're trying to play as safe as possible, beavers eat up to, and actually it's a little less, but they eat up to 3 food a day. And the longest droughts in the game, if you are playing on normal mode, do not last any longer than 20 days. So long as we have 3 times 20, so 60 food in storage for every beaver that we have in the colony, we will never run out of food during a drought. That means with 5.1, 5.2 food, we can float anywhere between 80 and 90 beavers, and we should always be good on food. Hey there, first voice editor note here. What I just said is not technically wrong, but I did make a mistake in my calculation. It is not 20 days for droughts on normal mode, it is 10 days max for droughts on normal mode. So it's 3 times 10 times beavers, so 30 food per beaver is the amount that you would need to store so that you would never run out of food during a drought. Obviously, if you want to go ahead and store 20, like I am going to do here, there's no harm in it other than that the food won't be used. But to be totally accurate here, you only need to prepare for 10 days without food. I will say this again later when I am talking about water. I'm not going to interject like this. It is 10 days. 10 days. Not 20. So I'm just going to make a massive expansion to really these larger lodges that we have. But rather than use planks to build more platforms so that the beavers can access these buildings, I'm actually going to make use of one of my favorite things that we unlocked last episode, dynamite. So I'm just going to, on the opposite sides of both of these large buildings, I'm just going to cut a large hole into the ground on both sides. Now, with our explosives in place, at least on this side of the living quarters, I am going to wait until all of the beavers vacate this area, and I'm going to blow this hole into the ground. We set this to detonate. And now that there is a 1 deep hole here, we can just take our housing from before, and we can actually just build these at ground level. So with that, all we have to do is connect up a path to the front of this house. And we're going to save on at least 20 or so planks doing it that way rather than the way we do it over here. It'll also give us a neat little step down here that I really like. And I just, you know, I do things because I like it half the time in this game. And we have a drought approaching. We have started expanding over here, so I guess we are going to put this theory that 5,000 food is enough to sustain our population to the test. Now with this side done, we will just mirror it on the other side. And as you see this time, I didn't wait for no beavers to be out of the way. This side is the rule-breaking side of the colony. All right, and with the left side done here, we have now expanded up to 35 open beds off of 59. So we have a total of about 94 beds here. So I'm going to do what is quite possibly my favorite thing to do in Timberborn, and I'm going to take this small double lodge and I am going to pause it to remove 6 beds, which will get us back down under 90. Which means that we should not have any food issues. Now, unlike before where I was pausing these and opening them up to make sure that we did not have too many babies at the same time, we already know that we have more than enough food. So I am not worried about that. What I am a little worried about is the water here. Now, I believe we have more than enough water production because this number does seem to be going up slowly. But I think the issue is more so that we are not storing enough water. Now, as we know, there are essentially 2 ways to store water in this game. Number one, we could put it into a tank like this. And that's actually how beavers drink water, is from tanks. The other way we can store water is what we have here, where we have a dam, and that dam is full of water. Now, this dam here is storing quite a bit of water. I don't know for sure how much, mostly because I've not counted the individual squares, and this is kind of irregularly shaped. The actual mechanic is that each full square of water stores 5 water in it. Now, as we can see, the small tank holds 30 water, so that's going to be the equivalent of just 6 squares of water that are filled up over here. The medium tank holds 300, so that's going to be 60 squares of water that's stored over here. But we do have a third option for storing water, and that is going to be this large water tank. Now, these are expensive to make. They are 30 metal blocks, 60 gears, and 80 planks. But they also have a storage capacity of 1,200 water. So that in and of itself is 4 times more than these medium tanks. And if you look at them, they're only a couple of blocks bigger. Even more impressively, holding 1,200 water means that one of these 3x3 storage tanks is probably holding as much water as is present in this reservoir. And it doesn't even evaporate. Now, it also doesn't irrigate, so that's an additional little complication of storing things in big water tanks. But given that all this water does evaporate during a drought, we need to have a stockpile of water on hand over here that our larger population of beavers can drink from. And so drought now has started. It is 6 days long. For reference, that does mean that we are going to need at least 18 food per beaver. We're going to have more than enough. We only have 55 beavers or something. So that's not going to at all affect our food storage. Now, as we were talking about before, the worry here is that it might affect our water storage. We are only storing 600 water. This water is going to dry up as the drought goes on. This water is going to dry up as the drought goes on. This one will too, but all of the standing water is going to dry up as the drought goes on. So is 600 going to be enough water for our beavers? Beavers consume less water than they do food. So while they consume up to about 3 food per day on average, they only consume a little more than 2 water a day on average. Now this means that since we are storing water like this, if we were going to be playing it as safe as possible, we would only need 2 water per day per beaver to survive a drought. Now we have 55 beavers. 2 water per 55 beavers is going to be about 110, which is going to mean that over a 6-day drought, if we had no water pumps running, we would use 660 water. So as we can see, our water storage is just at what we need for right this second with an unexpanded population that has not started using these 32 extra beds. And that does mean that probably the smartest thing we could do now is upgrade to a larger tank. Now I'm going to leave these 2 tanks here. These tanks are currently where our beavers that are living over here primarily get their water. So I'm just going to go over here to our storage area and I'm going to build our water stores over here. So these large water tanks are 3x3. That's going to be difficult to just shove in over here. But where we could put it is on top of our large warehouses, which are also 3x3. But that's going to mean that we need to build up to that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just turn this. Oop, that was the wrong way. I'm going to build a staircase over here. And then I'm going to, oh, I've never unlocked double platforms. I'm going to spend 150 sides points to unlock double platforms. And I'm going to drag that over here. And our beavers will finally be able to get up to here, up to this cliffside. And they'll finally be able to pick up this rubble and these 40 logs that have been up here for about 4 episodes now. And then I'm going to spend 600 science points to unlock a large tank. I'm going to stick that up here. I'm going to set this one off the bat to supply. And now as we can see, they've built their pathway up here and they're starting to build this large tank. I have a feeling we are going to be waiting on planks for that, but they're producing more than enough planks as is, so that'll all be fine. Well, it'll all be fine once we have power back up. Obviously, our water wheels are not going to work during this drought. The windmills normally would work during the drought, but we have hit a day where we apparently also have no wind. We're not going to be producing very much in the way of anything over here, but they are still running at some efficiency level, which means that even in the worst droughts, we're not going to be totally devoid of produced goods. Now, unrelated, we are running into a bit of an issue with the social life for our beavers. I'm going to solve that by just building another rooftop terrace up here where we already have that path. Then I'm also going to... This one's going to be a bit whopper-jocked here, but I'm going to stick another campfire just right at the back here. And there we go. The drought has ended, which does mean that our water wheel will start working again, which means that our production buildings will start working again, which means that everything should get back on track with this large tank. And with that, as the morning ticks over, our large tank has been completed. So that is going to boost us up to 1,800 water storage. But it is important to remember that this is storing water, this is storing water, and technically this is storing water, though at the moment we're not capitalizing on that at all. In conjunction, that means that we are nearing that 3,400 water storage. Even so, I am going to come over here and I'm going to make a second large water tank. And I'm going to attach that, and then I'm going to set this to lowest priority. I do not want them building this water tank over anything else. But if we are sitting on extra of materials, then they can build this water tank. That'll put us up to about 3,000 water being stored, which is going to be more than enough with these reservoirs that we have. So for our third and final infrastructure upgrade, I want to change our piles over here. Now, I know that we just did these, so it may seem early, but we are to the point where we should probably start replacing these with underground piles. Underground piles are going to store up to 1,800 of any sort of material, which means that we will be able to get rid of basically everything we have over here for logs and stick them in an underground pile. I'm just going to destroy one of these log storages, unlock underground piles. These are the same size as a large pile. The only real difference is that they cost more materials. This is going to take gears, planks, and logs. We have nearly enough gears. We have quite a few planks, and we have the logs. So I expect this will be done fairly soon. We will also set this one to logs. And as we will see at our hauling post, we are actually full on beavers here. Because with our expanded population, we have for the first time in I think 4 or 5 episodes, we have a beaver without something to do. Which means that everything over here should be full, should have its job filled. We're actually, I wasn't going to do this, we're teetering dangerously close to not having enough power. Again. So I am just going to go ahead and I'm going to build a power wheel here. For that one remaining beaver to have something to do. And with so many beavers starting to grow up, I'm actually going to do one other thing that I wasn't planning on doing, but I should probably do now. I'm going to put down a builder's hut. Now, these are not unlocked automatically. I unlocked a builder's hut a long time ago when I was building this hauling post. It was an accident, but I'm going to stick that right over here, and I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the hauling post and give it a lower workplace priority. And then our unemployed beavers that are starting to grow up will go and fill those workplaces. And everything will be hunky-dory. As we can see, we are just waiting on planks. We actually have more than enough, but I assume they're just having trouble getting here. Oh, and it has been completed. Our underground pile has been built. As we can see, it is storing the logs that were in this pile before. And what I am going to do is I'm going to set all these other piles to empty. And of course, as soon as I do that, the haulers are all going to go to bed. But we will see with the morning that the haulers are going to move all of those logs into the underground pile. They're apparently going to leave this one log here. Okay, they got it. And then I'm going to delete another one of these, and I'm going to set them to build a second underground pile, this time for planks. Because at some point when we get our plank production under control, we will actually want all of our planks to be put into one of these large piles, because we will just be having so many planks. At least that is the goal. I'm then going to take this other large pile here. I'm going to take it off of logs and I'm going to put it on metal. And I'm going to take this large pile and I'm going to put it on scrap metal. They don't actually need to be having scrap metal over here, so I'm going to also put it on supply. But as we can see, the scrap metal storage over here has been filled up. So we're not going to be producing any scrap metal with that full, unless we have a place to start storing more scrap metal. So we're just going to make that. The other thing I'm going to do as more of these beavers start to grow up, I'm just going to build us another hauling post in the same spot. Everything's going over here for whatever reason. And I'm going to once again, like this one, all the workplaces, slightly lower priority. But as we can see, we've got 9 beavers that have grown up at this point. So to at least make sure that those beavers are doing something and not just being a burden as adults, we're going to build a hauling post so that they can do something. Our second water tank is built. We have set that one to supply as well. I don't know if those are ever going to get filled up while we have our current water production situation going on, but they are there for when we expand it. Now, as we can see, having more log storage has actually made the beavers finally able to cut down all these trees. That's probably something we will think about in the future when we start actually capitalizing on this area that we unlocked last episode. But for now, we do not have as much of an unlimited amount of wood as we used to. And our second underground pile has been finished. Now, we could turn all of these into underground piles. I do not think that is necessary at this stage, though it is probably necessary in the long run. And as the sun comes up on a new day, I think that is where we are going to end this episode. Now, Tutopolis may not look super different from above, but we have done quite a few changes. First off, we put an end to the energy issue we were having over here by incorporating windmills into our industrial plateau. These are non-permanent and we will eventually move on to bigger windmills in a different location, but for now, this keeps us from having downtime due to lack of power. We've expanded our living quarters to make full use of all the resources we have. All of our food storage now, if we're using the safest calculations, is serving a purpose of being able to be used by a beaver in the case of a drought. We will come back to expanding our beavers population in the future, but we should no longer need to devote entire bits of episodes to it. We have built 2 large water tanks so that we can make sure that we have enough storage if need be on water. These 2 are more fail-safes than anything if something were to contaminate our water like in a bad tide. But for now, they give us quite a bit of breathing room with our larger population. And last but not least, we upgraded some of our piles into the final tier of storage, the large underground pile. These allow us to store massive amounts of planks and logs. Currently, this log storage stores more than our entire pile storage did before. And that is where we are going to end today's episode. In the next episode, we will be over here and we will be building another dam, this time incorporating sluices, the new feature that was added in Update 6. And while I'm at it, I do just want to make one thing clear. I saw a little bit of panic when I released the first episode of Siltforge. That is not replacing the series, that is an auxiliary series to this one. Tutopolis will still be the main focus of this channel for now. And while I'm still trying to get the split just right, I think it is going to end up being 2 episodes of Tutopolis to every 1 episode of Siltforge. But I do just want to stress that Tutopolis is not going away, and it is still remaining a priority. With that said, if you want to continue seeing episodes of this series as they come out, then please do subscribe. Otherwise, you're at the will of the YouTube algorithm, and who knows if it will decide to one day stop suggesting Tutopolis guides to you. If you enjoyed this episode, then please do like and comment. Tell me everything I did wrong. Tell me if I mispronounced something, if it's actually supposed to be pronounced Wandmeal, then please do let me know. And with that, Tutopolis, as always, will return. Goodbye.